Imagine a society that has cured basically all physical ailments.
Right.
Like a society that has totally conquered the limits of space with instant teleportation. And, one that can seamlessly hide a 100,000-seat sports stadium in plain sight, and nobody even bats an eye.
It sounds like magic.
Yeah.
Literally.
Right. You'd think you were looking at an absolute utopia. But now imagine that same society is so profoundly crippled by, well, bureaucratic arrogance and just deep institutional rot that it can't even keep track of its own missing employees.
Yeah, that's the kicker.
It's wild. A society where the government is just leaving the back door wide open for a catastrophic collapse simply because they find the paperwork annoying. So welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here.
We are so thrilled to have you with us today as we unpack a really fascinating stack of sources.
Yeah, it's an incredibly rich set of materials we're looking at today. We are diving into the highly detailed opening chapters of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire.
And our mission for this deep dive is to really trace this massive tonal shift. I mean, we are watching this narrative transition in real time.
Shedding its skin, basically.
Exactly. Shedding the skin of this whimsical, boarding school adventure and transforming into a highly complex, incredibly mature thriller. We are going to explore the intricate and honestly sometimes baffling world building.
Very baffling sometimes.
Yeah, and the bizarrely mundane bureaucratic structures of wizarding society, plus the subtle, much darker themes of class warfare and secrecy that are just bubbling under the surface of these pages. You've probably read or watched this story and focused on the magic, but today we're looking at the machinery underneath it all.
Right, and the central contradiction at the heart of this society is really what makes it so compelling to analyze. I mean, we were observing a community with literal godlike powers.
Yeah, manipulating reality with a stick.
Exactly, a piece of wood. Yet, as the sources reveal, they are completely reliant on a disorganized, just bumbling government.
Yeah.
And crucially, the unpaid, unseen labor of a hidden underclass. It is a brilliant illustration of how supernatural power does not eliminate human flaws. It often just magnifies them.
That makes total sense. So let's jump right into the anatomy of a magical murder mystery because, well, the text doesn't even start with the magical society.
No, it really doesn't.
It starts in the most mundane setting possible, right? Little Hangleton, a muggle village. We get this prologue focused entirely on the Riddle house, which is this creepy, derelict manor on a hill, and a deeply tragic figure named Frank Bryce.
Yeah, Frank Bryce is, he's a masterclass in establishing stakes through an outsider's perspective. The text introduces him not as a magical participant, but basically as collateral damage in a world he completely doesn't understand.
Right.
I mean, Frank is a World War II veteran. He returned from the horrors of the war with a stiff leg and a profound aversion to crowds and loud noises.
Which are clear indicators of severe trauma.
Oh, absolutely. Classic signs. So he took this quiet, solitary job as the gardener for the wealthy, snobbish Riddle family. But 50 years ago, the entire Riddle family, the elderly parents and their grown son, Tomsip, they were found dead in their drawing room.
And the medical report on their bodies is what really kicks off the true mystery of this world. Because it's absolutely bizarre.
So inexplainable.
Yeah. The doctors examine the Riddles and they find no poison in their systems. They weren't stabbed. They weren't shot, strangled, suffocated, nothing.
Not a single mark on them?
Right. In fact, the report states with total bewilderment that they appeared to be in perfect health, except for the, minor detail that they were dead.
Oh.
And they all had a look of absolute, unadulterated terror on their faces.
Right, which from a forensic standpoint is clinically impossible. You have 3 corpses with 0 pathology.
Wow.
The curse used to kill them. It doesn't damage tissue. It doesn't leave a chemical residue. It simply severs the tether between the body and life itself. But, a muggle coroner doesn't know that.
Obviously not.
They just see a biological impossibility. And that complete lack of physical evidence creates a massive sociological vacuum in the village of Little Hangleton.
And human nature abhors a vacuum, right?
Yes.
Especially when a community is panicked. They need a scapegoat.
They always do.
So the local police immediately arrest Frank Bryce. He's the outsider. He's the quiet veteran with a limp. So he just perfectly fits the profile they want to project onto him.
Yeah, and even though the police are forced to release him because there is literally not a shred of evidence linking him to a crime that has no physical cause, the village never forgives him.
Never.
For 50 years, he becomes a pariah. The community universally condemns him as a murderer who somehow got away with it. Yet, driven by this fierce, stubborn pride, He stays on as the gardener for the abandoned property, living in this rundown cottage on the grounds.
That isolation, it really sets the stage for what happens on a fateful night in August. Frank is nearing his 77th birthday. He wakes up with terrible pain in his bad leg, goes to the kitchen to fill a hot water bottle, and notices a fire lit up in the abandoned Riddle house.
Right.
He naturally assumes the local kids are breaking in again to mess with him, because that's what his life has been. So he grabs his rusty old key and his walking stick, and he limps up to the house in the dead of night.
It's so atmospheric.
It really is. But when he gets inside, he doesn't find teenagers. He overhears two men plotting a murder.
And this is where the narrative brilliance really shines. The text uses Frank's not-magical perspective to introduce us to the villains.
Oh, that's such a good point, right.
Because Frank lacks the vocabulary for what he's hearing. He hears them discussing Quidditch and the Ministry of Magic and Muggles, and he tries to rationalize it.
Because he has to.
Exactly. He concludes these men must be spies or like underground criminals using code words.
Yeah.
It really highlights how utterly impenetrable the magical world is to an outsider.
He hears one man named Wormtail, whose voice is timid and fearful, and a second man with a voice that is high-pitched, cold, and just completely devoid of humanity.
Voldemort.
Yes, Lord Voldemort. And what's shocking here is Voldemort's physical state. I mean, we're used to thinking of him as an all-powerful terror, but right now he is in a shockingly vulnerable parasitic condition.
Yeah, he's so frail.
He literally has to be carried to a chair by Wormtail. He needs to be fed every few hours. And the food source, oh my gosh. He asks Wormtail to milk a giant 12-foot snake named Nagini so he can consume her venom in the night.
It is a profoundly grotesque image.
Grotesque is the word.
I mean, the most feared dark wizard of the century is reduced to a helpless, almost infantile state. Yeah. He's entirely dependent on a sycophantic coward who visibly flinches whenever he has to touch him.
The power dynamic is so weird.
Very weird. And Wormtail isn't acting out of loyalty. He actively suggests abandoning their complex plan to capture Harry Potter. He offers to find some other witch or wizard to use instead, simply because it would be easier and less risky for him.
But Voldemort sees right through that cowardice. He knows Wormtail just wants an excuse to run away. So Voldemort systematically dismantles Wormtail's argument by revealing the depth of their plot.
Right.
Wormtail had previously brought him a missing Ministry of Magic worker named Bertha Jorkins. Voldemort explains how he extracted vital information from her by breaking a memory charm placed on her. And then, because she was, quote, useless after the interrogation, he killed her.
Just casually mentions it.
Exactly. Now, they are biding their time, waiting for the Quidditch World Cup to end so they can execute an intricate trap for Harry Potter.
And Frank Bryce is standing in the hallway, absorbing all of this. He hears this chillingly calm voice confessing to the murder of a woman named Bertha, and meticulously detailing the planned murder of a young boy named Harry.
Okay, now I have to step in here and push back on Frank's decision-making process. I really do.
Go for it.
Put yourself in Frank's shoes. You are 76 years old with a bad leg. You just watched a giant, venomous snake slither past you into a room.
A very large snake, yes.
Right. You're listening to men casually discuss murders they've already committed and ones they are planning. Why on earth does Frank stay to listen? Why doesn't he run away immediately? It's like hearing a burglar break into your house, realizing they have weapons, and deciding to stand in the hallway taking detailed notes on their conversation instead of sneaking out and calling the police.
It does seem completely unhinged.
It seems wildly irrational.
On the surface, it absolutely seems counterintuitive. Survival instinct should totally dictate flight there. But if we dig into the deep psychological profile the text has built for Frank, it actually makes perfect tragic sense.
Okay, lay it on me.
You have to view this through the lens of his trauma. He survived the unimaginable horrors of a global war, only to return home and be falsely accused of a triple homicide.
Which is devastating.
Completely. For 5 decades, he has endured the whispers, the isolation, the thrown stones from local children. His entire adult life has been defined by the village's unjust condemnation.
So this is about vindication for him.
Precisely. He has a deep, starving need for justice. When he hears these men confessing to a real murder, his instinct isn't to flee, it's to gather evidence.
Oh, wow.
He thinks, this is it. I can go to the police with this information. I can finally prove to everyone that I am a good citizen, that I'm not the monster they think I am. His old wartime bravery kicks back in.
That breaks my heart a little bit.
It's awful.
Yeah.
In fact, when the snake, Nagini, finally alerts Voldemort to Frank's presence in the hallway, Frank doesn't cower. He steps into the room and demands that the man in the chair face him like a man.
Which is an incredible display of courage. But obviously it ends in absolute tragedy. Wormtail turns the chair around. Frank sees whatever horrific, reduced, homunculus form Voldemort currently possesses, drops his walking stick in terror, and screams.
Yeah.
There's a blinding flash of green light, and Frank Bryce is dead before his body even hits the floor.
He becomes a completely senseless Muggle casualty in a magical war he couldn't possibly comprehend. Killed simply for being in the wrong place at the wrong time.
And the moment that green light flashes, the narrative instantly shifts gears and locations. 200 miles away, 14-year-old Harry Potter violently wakes up. The lightning bolt scar on his forehead is burning, as though someone pressed a white-hot wire directly to his skin.
This transition is a really crucial pivot point for Harry's character development. The text is signaling to you that we are dealing with a much more mature protagonist than in previous years.
Exactly. He's not panicking. He's sitting in the dark, evaluating his options with this surprising emotional detachment.
Right. In the past, his immediate reaction might have been to rush to his best friends, Ron Weasley and Hermione Granger, or, to seek out the headmaster, Albus Dumbledore. But he rationally assesses the flaws in those plans.
Yeah, he really thinks it through.
He does. He knows Hermione's reaction would be to frantically consult a textbook on magical ailments and induce panic. He knows Ron would tell his father, and the entire Weasley family would fuss over him in a way that would make him super uncomfortable.
And he knows he has absolutely no idea how to contact Dumbledore during the summer holidays anyway.
Exactly. So instead of causing a widespread panic, he makes a highly calculated, strategic decision. He chooses to write a letter to his godfather, Sirius Black.
And the context the sources provide here is vital for you to remember. Sirius is an escaped convict. He was wrongfully imprisoned in Azkaban for 12 years for the very murders that Wormtail actually committed.
The irony is heavy.
So heavy. Harry helped Sirius escape the previous year, and now Sirius is a fugitive on the run, hiding out in some undisclosed tropical location.
What's truly fascinating here is Harry's emotional self-awareness.
Yeah.
As he's deciding to write to Sirius, he admits to himself that he doesn't just want tactical advice about a dark curse. He wants a parent.
Oh, that's so sad.
He longs for an adult wizard who actually cares about his well-being and has real-world experience with dark magic.
Oh.
It's a poignant moment of vulnerability wrapped in a very pragmatic decision.
And the execution of the letter is brilliant in its casualness. He doesn't want to trigger a panic in a wanted fugitive, so he basically buries the lead.
He really does.
He starts the letter by talking about mundane summer stuff, mentioning that his cousin Dudley threw his PlayStation out the window because of a new diet, and then he just casually drops in, "Oh, by the way, my scar hurt a bit this morning." Do cursed scars twinge years later?
So casual.
He deliberately downplays the sheer terror of the dream to manage Sirius's reaction.
It demonstrates a sophisticated level of emotional protection. Harry is actively managing the adults in his life. He's taking on the burden of filtering information to protect them, which is a very mature, if somewhat heartbreaking, adaptation to his deeply unstable circumstances.
It really is. And that letter provides a perfect thematic bridge. Because while Harry is internally grappling with mortal danger and a psychic connection to a dark wizard, his immediate day-to-day physical reality is dominated by something far more mundane and, quite frankly, miserable.
Oh, yeah.
He is trapped in the suffocating environment of a suburban diet.
We are pulled straight into the Dursley household at number 4, Privet Drive, and the text explores the intense collision between the mundane and the magical.
The environment at the Dursleys is built entirely on the repression of abnormality. Harry's aunt and uncle, Petunia and Vernon, vehemently hate magic. They force Harry to hide his wizarding identity, his school trunk, his spellbooks, everything, just so the neighbors won't suspect anything weird.
God forbid the neighbors talk.
Exactly. But right now, the entire house is in an absolute uproar because of Dudley, Harry's cousin. The school nurse sent a letter home essentially saying they no longer stock school uniforms big enough to fit him.
That's a rough letter to get.
The text notes he has reached the size and weight of a, quote, young killer whale.
So Aunt Petunia, whose entire worldview is based on appearances, institutes a draconian diet for the whole family. Presumably so. Dudley doesn't feel singled out.
And when I say draconian, I mean they are surviving on quarters of unsweetened grapefruit for breakfast.
Just brutal.
It's a regime of aggressive deprivation. But Harry isn't starving because he anticipated this. He secretly used his owl to write to his magical friends for emergency rations.
Oh, smart kid.
Very. He's got sugar-free snacks smuggled in from Hermione, heavy rock cakes from the Hogwarts gamekeeper Hagrid, and massive fruitcakes and meat pies sent by Ron's mother, Mrs. Weasley. He is operating a clandestine food smuggling ring, hiding this massive stash under a loose floorboard in his bedroom.
It's a wonderful structural contrast, right?
Yeah.
It highlights the total disconnect between Harry's two realities. In the magical world, he is a famous survivor, a target of dark forces carrying the weight of a war.
Right.
In the Muggle world, he is literally hoarding pie under a floorboard to survive a grapefruit diet imposed by his deeply petty aunt.
And that profound disconnect explodes into brilliant physical comedy when the magical world actually attempts to interface with Privet Drive.
Oh, this part is gold.
The Weasley family decides to pick Harry up for the Quidditch World Cup, and the friction starts with the very first communication. Mrs. Weasley tries to send a letter via the Muggle postal service, but because she has no concept of how non-magical mail works, she covers every square inch of the envelope in stamps,
Every single inch.
leaving only a microscopic square in the center for the address.
Which is such an illuminating detail. It shows Mrs. Weasley's genuine, warm-hearted attempt to engage with the Muggle world, but her complete, fundamental lack of understanding of its basic infrastructure.
Oh, and the fallout is immediate. The Muggle postman notices the ridiculous envelope and actually rings the doorbell to point it out because he thinks it's funny. Uncle Vernon is livid.
Of course he is.
Uncle Vernon's greatest, most consuming fear is being perceived as abnormal by the neighborhood. But Harry, demonstrating that new maturity, uses this fear as leverage. He mentions to Vernon that he needs to finish a letter to his godfather, reminding Vernon that his godfather is a convicted murderer.
Such a power move.
Vernon practically turns inside out with terror and immediately grants Harry permission to leave with the Weasleys for the rest of the summer, just to get him out of the house.
But the real masterpiece of this section is the actual physical arrival of the Weasleys.
Yeah.
It is where you see the sheer incompatibility of these two systems.
It is a disaster of epic proportions. The Dursleys are terrified. Uncle Vernon puts on his best suit, somehow thinking a nice tie will intimidate wizards.
As if that would help.
Right? Dudley is clutching his backside in terror because the last time he met an adult wizard, he ended up with a pig's tail magically grafted onto him. They were waiting nervously by the front door, expecting the Weasleys to drive up in a car.
But Arthur Weasley, Ron's father, decides to use the Flu Network.
Uh-oh.
For context, this involves traveling through fireplaces using magical powder. Arthur uses his connections at the Ministry to temporarily hook the Dursleys' fireplace up to the magical grid.
The catastrophic flaw in this plan is that Arthur never considered that Muggles might block their fireplaces. The Dursleys have completely boarded up their hearth and placed a fake plug-in electric heater in front of it.
A terrible oversight.
So Mr. Weasley, Ron, and his older twin brothers, Fred and George, materialize via magical fire, only to find themselves trapped in a confined chimney behind solid wooden boards. The tension in the pristine Dursley living room is suddenly shattered by these muffled shouts of, "Ouch, Fred, no, go back!" echoing from behind the electric heater.
It's the ultimate violent intrusion of the magical into the hyper-curated mundane space. When Arthur Weasley realizes they are trapped, he uses a blasting charm to blow the fireplace open.
Naturally.
The explosion destroys the boarded-up wall, sending rubble and choking white dust all over the Dursleys and their meticulously clean living room.
I always compare the Weasleys arriving in the Dursley living room to someone trying to force a high-voltage industrial European plug into a standard low-voltage domestic socket.
Oh, that's good.
You can try to jam it in, but sparks are going to fly, the system is going to short-circuit, and something is going to catch fire. These two cultures are fundamentally incompatible.
That analogy is perfect, and you see it clearly in Arthur Weasley's reaction.
Mm-hmm.
He isn't angry about the blocked fireplace. He is entirely joyfully distracted by the electric heater he just destroyed.
He loves it.
He starts bombarding Vernon with questions about electricity and how the plugs work. He tells Vernon he collects batteries. He is genuinely, innocently fascinated by Muggle technology, treating it like a fascinating anthropological study.
Which Vernon hates.
Right, because Uncle Vernon, who desperately needs the world to conform to rigid normalcy, views this innocent curiosity as a profound, deliberate insult. Vernon thinks Arthur is mocking him, or worse, that Arthur is completely unhinged.
The awkwardness is palpable. You can almost feel the air vibrating with tension. But it escalates from awkwardness to absolute chaos thanks to Fred and George. As the Weasleys are finally leaving via the magical fire, Fred supposedly accidentally drops a brightly colored candy, a Tung-Tung toffee, on the living room floor.
Classic Fred.
And Dudley, who has been literally starving on a diet of grapefruit quarters, sees a piece of candy, waits for the adults to look away, and immediately shoves it in his mouth.
The physical consequence is swift and grotesque.
Yeah.
The toffee is magically engineered to engorge the tongue. Dudley's tongue rapidly grows 4 feet long. It becomes this massive, purple, slimy appendage protruding from his mouth, suffocating him.
Absolute pandemonium breaks out. Aunt Petunia is screaming hysterically, throwing herself at Dudley and trying to literally rip the giant tongue out of his mouth with her bare hands.
Which is horrifying.
Oh, Uncle Vernon is bellowing with rage and starts throwing heavy china ornaments at Arthur Weasley. And Arthur, bless his heart, is just trying to fix the situation with his wand, desperately yelling, "I'm trying to help," over the sound of breaking porcelain.
The total mess.
Harry realizes that this is entirely beyond his control, steps into the green flames, shouts, "The burrow!" and spins away from this total spectacular meltdown.
It's a highly comedic scene, but it serves a crucial narrative purpose. It firmly establishes the twins, Fred and George, as agents of chaos and disruption. And this perfectly transitions us into examining the ecosystem that actually produced them, the burrow.
Yes, let's look at the Weasley family home. Harry spins through the magical fire and lands in the Weasleys' kitchen. Now, the magical chaos here is just as loud and messy as the Dursleys' living room was a minute ago, but the frequency is completely different.
Very different energy.
The chaos here is fueled by love, massive family ambition, and creative energy, rather than fear and repression.
Although Molly Weasley is certainly supplying the fear at the moment, she is absolutely furious about the Tun-Tung Toffee.
Rightfully so.
She had explicitly forbidden the twins from manufacturing these dangerous joke items. And her argument with them introduces us to the complex internal dynamics of the Weasley family, which the sources use as a brilliant microcosm of the broader wizarding world.
Let's break down this family dynamic, because the texts introduce us to the 2 oldest brothers for the first time, and they are fascinating foils for the younger siblings. We meet Bill, who works as a curse breaker for the wizarding bank Gringotts in Egypt. And Bill is cool.
He's incredibly cool.
I don't mean just successful, I mean rock star cool. He has long hair tied back in a ponytail, he's wearing an earring with a dangling fang, and he's sporting dragonhide boots.
Then there's Charlie, who works on a dragon reserve in Romania. He's described as stocky, muscular, heavily freckled, and weather-beaten, with a large, shiny burn across his arm from his work.
Sounds intense.
Both Bill and Charlie are highly successful, independent adults who have pursued adventurous, inherently dangerous careers outside of Britain.
Now contrast them with the siblings still living at home. You have Fred and George, who represent pure, unadulterated entrepreneurial rebellion. They spent 6 months secretly inventing that Tun-Tung Toffee, completely ignoring their academic exams in the process.
To their mother's horror?
Their ambition is to open a joke shop. This absolutely infuriates their mother, Molly, whose ultimate definition of success is securing a safe, respectable job at the Ministry of Magic.
And that brings us to Percy. Percy is the embodiment of everything Molly wants and everything the twins despise.
He really is.
Percy is the ultimate bureaucrat. He has just graduated and started working for the Department of International Magical Cooperation at the Ministry. And he is completely consumed by administrative minutia. He is currently obsessed with writing a report on standardizing the thickness of cauldron bottoms.
Oh my gosh, he won't stop talking about cauldron leaks. He talks about it like it's going to be front page news and change the world.
To Percy, it is changing the world. He argues that cheap imported cauldrons are too thin and present a safety hazard. It's actually a valid geopolitical trade issue, but Percy is incredibly pompous about it.
Extremely pompous.
More importantly, his bureaucratic mindset makes him utterly subservient to authority. He absolutely worships his boss, a man named Mr. Crouch. He quotes him constantly. Percy represents the rigid, rule-following, deeply ambitious side of wizarding society that values order above all else.
And this clash of personalities becomes incredibly significant, almost terrifyingly so, when we look at the conversation they have during dinner out in the garden. First of all, the atmosphere of the dinner scene is amazing.
That sounds lovely.
You have Bill and Charlie using their wands to make 2 battered old tables fly high above the lawn, smashing them into each other in a mid-air joust, while Percy leans out a window and yells at them to keep the noise down because he's trying to work. It's a very relatable family dynamic.
But once they actually sit down to eat, the conversation naturally turns to ministry business. And this is where the text drops a massive, quiet piece of societal foreshadowing right in front of the reader.
Oh, this is the big one.
Percy begins complaining about another department head, Ludo Bagman. He calls Bagman irresponsible and lacking in proper bureaucratic rigor. To prove his point, Percy uses a specific example. A ministry worker named Bertha Jorkins has been missing in Albania for over a month, and Bagman isn't doing anything to find her.
Now, wait a minute. Think about this from the perspective of what we learned in the prologue. We, the audience, know from the very first chapter that Voldemort interrogated and murdered Bertha Jorkins.
All right, we literally heard him confess to it.
But here at the Burrows, sitting around a dinner table, Percy casually dismisses her as a disorganized nuisance who probably just got lost. He says she has a, quote, memory like a leaky cauldron. He mentions that Bagman thinks she probably just misread a map and ended up in Australia by mistake.
This raises a critical, alarming question about the nature of this magical government's intelligence network. You have an entire bureaucracy that ignores a missing government employee simply because they find her personally annoying and professionally incompetent.
Wow.
Their institutional arrogance creates a massive, fatal security blind spot. Because no one respects Bertha, no one's looking for her. And because no one is looking for her, Voldemort is able to operate in secret, gathering the intelligence he needs to return to power.
It's chilling when you realize that it isn't dark magic that gives Voldemort his initial advantage. It's a simple lack of bureaucratic empathy.
That's exactly what it is.
But the dinner conversation isn't exclusively dark. They start discussing the upcoming Quidditch World Cup, and we get some fascinating global demographics. Charlie mentions that Transylvania beat England 390-10. They talk about Wales losing to Uganda and Scotland getting absolutely slaughtered by Luxembourg.
This is a vital world-building moment. Up until now, the sources have largely focused on British magic. But this dinner dialogue explicitly tells the listener that wizarding society is not a localized phenomenon. It is a vast, deeply interconnected global community with its own international sporting politics.
Which instantly brings up a massive, almost impossible logistical nightmare. If you have a global magical sporting event with 100,000 attendees flying in from Uganda, Transylvania, and Luxembourg, how on earth do you organize that inside Britain without the non-magical world noticing?
That leads us directly into the staggering logistics of secrecy, which the text explores in vivid detail when the group actually travels to the Cup.
And that journey starts with a brutal wake-up call. It's 5:40 a.m., it's pitch black outside, it's freezing cold. Arthur Weasley is trying to dress like a muggle to go incognito, and he completely fails.
Bless him, he tries.
He's wearing a golfing sweater and a very old pair of jeans held up by a massive, thick leather bolt. And the kids, who are freezing and exhausted, are asking the obvious question. Why can't we just apparate?
Apparition, of course, being the primary magical method for instant point-to-point teleportation.
Right. If you can teleport, why are you walking in the dark? Arthur explains that apparition is incredibly difficult, highly regulated, and requires a ministry license. And the consequences of doing it wrong are severe. If you lack determination or focus, you can splinch yourself.
Splinching is a horrifying physical concept.
So horrifying.
Arthur casually mentions a couple who recently botched their apparition and left half of their bodies behind on a pavement, while the other half arrived at their destination. They survived, but it required the accidental magic reversal squad to come and physically put them back together. It's a very stark, visceral reminder that magic is inherently volatile and dangerous.
Okay, so teleportation is out for a massive crowd of kids and international travelers. But instead of flying on brooms, the entire Weasley group, plus Harry and Hermione, are trudging for miles in the freezing cold up a steep, muddy hill called Stoatshead Hill. What are they looking for? A port key?
The mechanics of port keys are fascinating from an infrastructure perspective. Arthur explains that they are specific objects enchanted to transport large groups of witches and wizards to a prearranged destination at a highly specific prearranged time.
Okay.
And to ensure that muggles don't stumble upon them and accidentally activate them, port keys are intentionally disguised as unobtrusive, repulsive trash.
I have to stop here and look at this logically. If these people possess magic wands that can alter the fabric of reality, why are they walking miles in the dark to touch a smelly, moldy old boot on top of a hill?
It does seem counterintuitive.
It seems incredibly primitive for a supposedly advanced society.
If we zoom out and look at the bigger picture, this primitive mechanism underscores the most fundamental law of this world. Secrecy trumps convenience every single time.
Oh, interesting.
The Ministry of Magic has an impossible task. They have to move 100,000 people to a single geographic location in Britain. If everyone apparated, the magical signatures and sudden pops would cause chaos.
That makes sense.
Right. If 100,000 people flew on broomsticks, Muggle radar and aviation authorities would undoubtedly notice a massive, anomalous swarm. So the ministry had to devise a system to stagger arrivals over weeks. They've placed 200 portkeys in strategic, isolated locations around Britain. It's a massive, highly coordinated, yet completely absurd-looking logistical operation.
They finally reach the top of the hill, find the moldy boot, and meet up with Amos Diggory and his son Cedric, who is this incredibly handsome, successful, popular student from Harry's school. They all gather around this manky piece of trash, each grabbing a small piece of it with a finger.
What a visual.
At exactly the appointed time, they are violently jerked forward. Harry describes it as feeling like a hook right behind his navel is pulling him forward with irresistible force. They spin through a howling wind and a vortex of color, and then slam violently into the ground on a misty moor.
They've successfully navigated the network and arrived at the campsite. But almost immediately, the ministry's carefully constructed logistical facade starts to show massive cracks.
Oh, it completely falls apart upon contact with the real world. They walk up to the site manager's cottage, and the manager, Mr. Roberts, is a real muggle. He's just a normal guy trying to run a campground. And Mr. Roberts is getting incredibly suspicious.
Because, frankly, the wizards are terrible at blending in. They have no concept of muggle culture.
Exactly. Arthur Weasley, who supposedly works in the Muggle Artifacts office, tries to pay Mr. Roberts with Muggle money and has to ask if a 10-pound note is a 20.
He has no idea.
He has no idea how currency works. Mr. Roberts mentions to Arthur that 2 people earlier that day tried to pay him with gold coins the size of hubcaps. He mentions seeing a guy walking around the campsite in a kilt and a poncho. He says the whole thing feels like a weird, unnatural rally.
And how does the ministry handle this very valid suspicion? A ministry official dressed in tweed +4s pops out of nowhere, points his wand at Mr. Roberts, and says, "Obliviate."
Wow.
Mr. Roberts' eyes instantly slide out of focus, his face goes completely slack, and his short-term memory is wiped clean.
The ministry wizard looks completely exhausted. He complains to Arthur that Mr. Roberts is so sharp that he requires a memory charm 10 times a day just to keep him docile and happy.
This exchange raises a profound observation about the world building. And it's something the text plays lightly for laughs, but it has very dark sociological implications.
Really dark.
Think about what is actually happening here. The Ministry of Magic is constantly, repeatedly erasing a man's memory, forcibly altering his perception of reality, and violating his cognitive autonomy, just so their society can hold a sporting event on his land.
It's systemic, casual, psychological manipulation. If you compare it to a real-world scenario, it's terrifying.
Precisely. It reveals a deeply ingrained sense of supremacy. The magical community views non-magical people almost like wildlife that needs to be managed or obstacles to be paved over, rather than human beings with fundamental rights to their own minds.
And this massive, sprawling logistical operation, managing the portkey network, dispatching squads to erase memories, organizing the layout of the campsite, is entirely run by the Ministry of Magic, which brings us face to face with the men who are actually in charge of this chaos.
The bureaucrats. The text gives us a brilliant contrasting study in management styles when Arthur Weasley introduces the group to 2 high-ranking officials, Ludo Bagman and Barty Crouch.
The visual contrast between these 2 men alone is stunning. They run into Ludo Bagman first. Bagman is the head of the Department of Magical Games and Sports. He's an overgrown, squash-nosed former Quidditch player. He is walking around a Muggle campsite wearing long Quidditch robes with thick, horizontal stripes of bright yellow and black, with a giant wasp emblem on his chest.
Subtle.
Not at all. He's bouncing on the balls of his feet, practically vibrating with excitement.
He is the quintessential ex-athlete riding on his past glory, completely lacking any professional decorum.
Now contrast that with Barty Crouch, the head of the Department of International Magical Cooperation. Crouch is a stiff, upright, elderly man in an impeccably crisp Muggle suit and tie. His parting is unnaturally straight. His toothbrush mustache looks like it was trimmed using a slide rule.
Very precise.
Very. He is fiercely intelligent, speaking over 150 languages, but he is so cold and disconnected from the human element of his staff that he calls his own devoted employee, Percy Weasley, Weatherby.
Oh, that's just insulting.
He literally doesn't care enough to learn the name of the boy who practically worships him.
It's a classic organizational dichotomy. You have the chaotic populist versus the rigid institutionalist.
If you've ever worked in a corporate office, you know these 2 exact types of managers. I compare Bagman and Crouch to the 2 most dangerous bosses you can have.
Oh, absolutely.
Bagman is the fun boss. He's loud, he's friendly, he wants everyone to like him, but he is secretly a massive liability. He's the guy who is probably embezzling company funds or creating massive HR violations behind the scenes.
Yep.
Crouch, on the other hand, is the rigid micromanager. He follows every protocol to the letter, he works insane hours, but he has zero interpersonal empathy and would throw you under the bus in a second if it served the institution.
And their actions at the campsite perfectly reflect these disastrous management styles. Bagman is wandering around the tents, openly shouting about magical sports terms in front of muggles, making the Obliviators' jobs infinitely harder. But more importantly, Bagman is gambling.
He is acting as a bookie, and not just with other adult government officials. He gleefully takes a bet from Fred and George Weasley, who are underage students.
Which is illegal on so many levels.
So illegal. The twins pool their entire life savings, 37 galleons, 15 sickles, and 3 nuts, plus a fake wand they invented that turns into a rubber chicken. They make a massive long-shot bet. They bet that Ireland will win the match, but the Bulgarian seeker, Victor Krum, will catch the snitch.
It's an insanely specific high-risk bet. And Bagman, a high-ranking government official, pockets these teenagers' life savings without a second thought. He even offers them 5 extra galleons for the rubber chicken wand because he thinks it's hilarious. It shows a complete lack of moral and professional judgment.
Meanwhile, Percy is writhing with excitement just to be in Mr. Crouch's presence, offering him tea and bowing so low he looks like a hunchback. But underneath all this comedic character interaction, the text drops more crucial plot information through these two men.
Right, because Arthur asks Bagman about the missing Bertha Jorkins, bringing her up again. And Bagman remains completely unconcerned. He cheerfully insists she'll probably wander back into the office in October thinking it's still July.
Unbelievable.
He treats a missing persons case like an office joke.
But Bagman casually mentions that Barty Crouch is the one who keeps demanding they send someone to look for her. Crouch is the only official showing actual systemic concern, likely because Bertha used to work in his department and he understands the value of institutional knowledge.
And then, both men drop subtle, tantalizing hints about a top-secret event happening at Hogwarts later that year. Bagman lacks the discipline to keep his mouth shut, teasing the kids that they'll find out soon enough and hinting at a grand spectacle.
Of course he does.
While Crouch immediately cuts him off sharply, insisting on protocol and secrecy.
It builds the anticipation beautifully for the rest of the book. But before we get to the actual match, the sources give us a fantastic look at the sheer, unchecked consumerism of magic. The campsite is basically a magical tailgating party crossed with a bizarre, high-end flea market.
The scene is incredibly vibrant and chaotic. Salesmen are apparating every few feet with carts full of merchandise. There are luminous rosettes that squeal the players' names, green hats covered in dancing shamrocks, flags that play national anthems when you wave them, and tiny collectible figures of the players that strut proudly across your hand.
Ron buys a miniature Victor Krum that scowls and paces on his palm, but the absolute focal point of this consumerism is when Harry buys omnioculars. They look like brass binoculars, but they are covered in strange knobs and dials. They can replay action on the field, slow it down frame by frame, and even flash a play-by-play text breakdown across the lenses. They cost 10 galleons each.
Which, in this economy, is a small fortune.
Right. And Harry, without hesitating, buys 3 pairs, one for himself, one for Hermione, and one for Ron. He tells Ron it's his Christmas present for the next 10 years to justify it.
That's sweet.
It's a very generous gesture, but it acutely highlights the underlying financial dynamic between them. Harry inherited a vast fortune of wizarding gold from his parents, while Ron is deeply, constantly insecure about his family's poverty.
Yeah, that's a recurring theme.
Ron feels awful that he can't afford these things, and he tries to pay Harry back with the leprechaun gold that falls from the sky later. Harry is constantly trying to balance his wealth with his friendship, trying not to make Ron feel like a charity case.
It's a subtle but persistent note of class tension. And that economic disparity perfectly prepares the listener for what happens when they actually leave the campsite and enter the stadium itself.
Oh, the stadium is a marvel. A deep, booming gong sounds across the woods, and green and red lanterns suddenly illuminate a path through the trees, leading to this colossal structure. Arthur remarks that it seats 100,000 people.
100,000.
The ministry had a task force of 500 workers working for a year to build it, wrapping it in layers of muggle-repelling charms so that if a muggle gets near it, they suddenly remember an urgent appointment and walk the other way.
Clever magic.
Inside, it's suffused with a mysterious, magical golden light. There's a gigantic blackboard flashing magical advertisements across the field like the Blue Bottle, a broom for all the family.
It is the pinnacle of magical engineering. And because of Arthur's connections at the ministries, specifically his help with the Flu Network, they are seated in the absolute highest, most prestigious tier, the top box.
They climb the purple carpeted stairs, enter the luxurious box, and find it completely empty, except for one tiny creature sitting in the second-to-last seat in the back row. It's a house elf.
This is a pivotal introduction for the thematic weight of the entire text.
At first glance, Harry thinks it's his friend Dobby, the house elf he famously freed from the abusive Malfoy family 2 years prior. But upon closer inspection, it's a female elf named Winky. She has enormous brown eyes, a nose like a large tomato, and she's wearing a simple tea towel draped like a toga. And she is absolutely paralyzingly terrified of heights.
Poor thing.
She keeps hiding her eyes in her hands, trembling in the seat.
So we have to ask, why is she there? What does this image mean for the society we are observing?
Harry asks her that exact question. If she's so terrified of heights that she can't even look over the edge, why is she sitting in the highest box in the stadium? And Winky explains that she isn't there to watch the game. She is there simply to save a seat for her master, Mr. Crouch. She says, Winky is wishing she's back in Master's tent, but Winky does what she is told. Winky is a good house elf.
The contrast she draws with Dobby is heartbreaking and deeply revealing about the structural flaws of this world. Winky tells Harry that Dobby is struggling to find a new family to take him in. Why? Because Dobby wants to be paid for his work.
Harry, coming from the Muggle world, thinks that makes perfect sense. He says, why shouldn't Dobby be paid for his labor?
But Winky is horrified by the very concept. She views wanting wages as having ideas above his station. She thinks freedom is going to Dobby's head, that he is acting unseemly like a common goblin who demands gold.
It's a devastating look at internalized oppression. This glamorous, highly advanced wizarding world, a world capable of building a 100,000-seat invisible stadium and creating instant replay binoculars, is fundamentally reliant on a cast of magical creatures who have been utterly brainwashed into embracing their own enslavement.
Exactly.
The system is so entrenched that the oppressed view their own desire for freedom or fair compensation as a mark of deep shame.
It introduces a profound structural rot in wizarding society. The beautiful golden light of that stadium, the comfort of the wealthy classes, is built entirely on the backs of unseen, unpaid servants who are forced into terrifying situations just to hold a chair.
And the physical layout of the top box reinforces this rigid, toxic hierarchy. The climax of these sources occurs right before the match begins, when the personal guests of Cornelius Fudge, the Minister of Magic, arrive in the top box.
Malfoy family. Lucius, his wife Narcissa, and their son Draco, who is Harry's bitter rival at school.
The moment they enter the box, the atmosphere completely freezes. You have the wealthy, aristocratic, pure-blood Malfoys coming face-to-face with the working-class, muggle-loving Weasleys.
The tension is awful.
Lucius Malfoy looks at Arthur Weasley and sneers, "Good Lord, Arthur, what did you have to sell to get seats in the top box? Surely your house wouldn't have fetched this much."
It is naked, venomous class warfare. Lucius Malfoy uses his immense wealth and his political influence with the Minister of Magic to publicly humiliate Arthur Weasley in front of his children and the most powerful people in the country. He leverages his status to remind Arthur exactly where he sits in the social hierarchy.
It's incredibly tense, and it perfectly encapsulates the immense journey we've taken through these opening chapters. Think about where we started and where we are now.
It's a wild ride.
We began in a dark, derelict house in a Muggle village where a brutal murder took place. We moved to the suffocating, repressive normalcy of Privet Drive, and then to the chaotic, ambitious warmth of the Weasley Burrow. We navigated the absurd, memory-wiping logistics of magical transportation, and now we are sitting in the absolute highest seats of a spectacular stadium, surrounded by the most intense prejudices and corruptions of this society.
The text has masterfully, almost invisibly, hidden deeply mature, systemic issues behind the whimsical facade of tung-tung toffees, flying tents, and magical sports.
It truly has. We are looking at a society plagued by bureaucratic negligence, where missing employees are treated as punchlines, We are looking at blatant class warfare and political corruption at the highest levels of government. And we are looking at the systemic exploitation of magical creatures to uphold the illusion of a utopia.
Which leaves us with a critical, lingering thought to consider.
I love these.
If you step back and look at the architecture of any massive, complex society, whether it's this magical fictional world or the very real bureaucratic structures you interact with every day, you have to pay close attention to the people who are casually written off.
The invisibles.
Exactly. A forgotten, quote-unquote, annoying employee like Bertha Jorkins, whose disappearance is mocked by her bosses, actually provided the crucial, highly classified intelligence that allows a Dark Lord to orchestrate his return to power.
Right.
An unseen, terrified servant, like a house elf, forced to sit in a terrifying location just to hold a seat for a master who ignores her, is a symptom of a much deeper institutional rot.
It's the ultimate blind spot of power.
It is. When the people at the very top of the hierarchy, the ministers, the wealthy elites like the Malfoys, the corrupt managers like the Bagmans, only look at each other, they completely miss the quiet, dismissed forces gathering in the shadows.
Which is their downfall.
Right. And it is almost always those forgotten pieces, the ignored data points, the unseen laborers that hold the key to the entire system unraveling. When the elite only focus on the spectacle of the game playing out in front of them, they are completely unprepared for the structural pillars beneath them to come crashing down.
A brilliant point to end on. You look at the X-ray and you think you see exactly where the bone is broken. But the real disease is in the marrow you aren't even bothering to look at.
Beautifully put.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the structures around you, keep looking for the blind spots in your own systems, and keep looking beyond the surface of your own worlds. Until next time.